Joining us now from Palm Beach, Lara Trump, the co-chair of the Republican National Committee. Joe Biden, as you know, is debated to be considering blanket pardons, preemptive pardons to anyone, mostly Democrats, who they fear might be investigated or even indicted by the Trump Justice Department. What do you think of that idea of handing out a bunch of preemptive pardons?
Oh, I think it's rather outrageous, Howie. I think it's such a bad precedent being set if that indeed happens for the future of this country. And I think a lot of people have said the same thing. Why is it that you would need to do blanket pardons like that if no one is guilty of anything? I think it leads people in this country to say, wow, these folks must have done something pretty bad that they're going to have to go out of their way to get preemptive pardons, things for which they haven't even been charged yet. And I really hope we don't see that. I think the American people are desperate to get back to a place, Howie, where they can trust these fundamental and foundational institutions of our country, like our Department of Justice. Doing things like that, I think, leads us down an opposite path. And I think it makes people feel like, you know, the past 4 years, maybe there's a lot more to hide that they really need to get to the bottom of. So I really hope we don't see that happen.
What about the president pardoning his son, Hunter, who, by the way, is a 54-year-old convicted criminal?
Yeah. Listen, you heard Donald Trump say he wasn't really surprised by that. And I think a lot of us maybe weren't surprised by it, despite the fact that Joe Biden, time after time after time, said, I won't do that. I won't pardon Hunter. I believe in the process. I believe in the Department of Justice. And then I think to see his statement when he came out and said that it was because Hunter was targeted, that everybody knows, any reasonable person would know that this was specific to Hunter because he was targeted because he's my son. No, Hunter Biden broke the law. And I think a lot of people, when those charges were brought forward against Hunter, said, oh, well, we all believe that this is a way they say, oh, look, we charged Hunter with something. The really big stuff, like, I don't know, jeopardizing our national security, what really happened in Ukraine and Russia and China, how is it Joe Biden was involved in this? We never heard about. I think a lot of people thought they charged Hunter with this to sweep it under the rug. And now he's been pardoned for 10 years. And whether or not we actually find out what happened, I don't know, but the American people deserve that. And I think they demand that. And I think it's one of the big reasons that you see Donald Trump as our 47th president.
Let me move on. Pete Hegseth, of course, is battling to save his nomination, Army combat veteran, to run the Pentagon. And Donald Trump has made clear he's still behind him. But news organizations have dug up information or allegations about personal conduct, past alcohol use, debts run up by the two organizations he ran. Is it unfair for the media to raise these questions?
Well, I think that you really do need a clear picture of any person going into a high profile and very important position like defense secretary. There's no doubt about it. However, I think the tactics that have been employed against all of Donald Trump's nominees, not the least of which, of course, is Pete Hegseth, are very similar, Howie, to what we saw happen to Donald Trump himself. These are a lot of personal attacks. I don't think it indicates how he would perform as Secretary of Defense. I think his background shows that he is actually incredibly qualified to do this job. And I think the American people rejected attacks like this when they overwhelmingly reelected Donald Trump to be that 47th president. I believe that Pete Hegseth is going to continue on. I think, like Donald Trump, he's not letting any of the noise distract him. And I think that's a great thing. I really hope to see him confirmed. I hope the senators are paying attention, the Republican senators, to the mandate the American people delivered on November 5th. Donald Trump needs people by his side who will get the job done. Pete Hegseth is certainly one of those people.
Well, let's turn to the DOGE, the budget cutting commission that Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy are heading up. And look, anybody who's been in Washington 20 minutes knows the government is totally bloated. But a lot of analysts say that Musk's goal of cutting $2 trillion from a $6.5 trillion budget is totally unrealistic, because that's more than the government spends on all non-defense programs, followed by interest payments on the debt. We've already spent that money, Social Security, Medicare, and then individual programs like VA health benefits. So on some level, isn't that mission impossible?
Well, it may be mission impossible to some people, but I think whenever you put the idea of something that may be impossible in front of people like Donald Trump, or I would say one of the brightest minds of our time, like Elon Musk, They see that as a personal challenge, and I think that's a great thing for this country. Look, we cannot go forward in perpetuity spending the amounts of money that we are as a country. And this is why DOGE is going to be such a huge thing for the future of this country. They need to be successful, Howie, because we really cannot see this go forward. We can't continue to spend this kind of money and think that there are not real implications on the other side of it for our children, for our grandchildren, and future generations of America. It just doesn't work. And so I think whenever you put great minds in there like Elon Musk, like Vivek Ramaswamy, and of course, Donald Trump, we'll see what they come up with. But having transparency for the American people is a good thing. Knowing that our tax dollars are not being wasted is a great thing.
Right.
That is what we deserve to see happen. And so I'm very optimistic about it.
Ron DeSantis is going to appoint a senator to fill the vacancy in Florida left by Marco Rubio. You've made clear you're interested. Is it an asset being a Trump?
Well, some may say it's an asset. Some may say it's not an asset. I think it depends how you look at it. Certainly, look, we've all had the opportunity over the past 9 years, really, to fully involve ourselves in politics, to understand the American people, what they want. And we've all been residents of the state of Florida now for over 3 years. And if that's something that's put in front of me, it would be a true honor. But yeah, look, I think probably my last name does heighten my political profile a little bit. But I've got a proven track record. I've been co-chair of the RNC during the most consequential election of our lifetime. We were so proud of what we did at the RNC, making sure that there was election integrity, making sure we got the early vote out, making sure we turned out low propensity voters, and raising huge amounts of money. So I would say that my track record speaks for itself. Maybe having the last name Trump is just a little bit extra. I'm always happy to have it.
Just briefly, Lara, what's this year been like for you on a personal level, you and your husband, Eric, with the media painting your father as a threat to democracy, and, of course, the 2 assassination attempts?
It's been a wild year. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I don't think there's any handbook or guidebook that could prepare you for anything like this, but we've kind of all felt that way since Donald Trump came down the golden escalator. It's been an honor to be really on the sideline of history, to see what happened in 2016, to be a part of this election in 2024. It's been a lot of challenge for, I think, my kids who are 5 and 7. They're happy to have mom and dad back a little bit more, seeing us a little more regularly, and they're really excited to see Grandpa take the oath of office on January 20th.
Well, congratulations to your kids, and thank you so much for joining us this Sunday.
Thank you.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.